So first thing when I was trying to put this thing together, it this always reminds me of, okay, so you said a thing here that I don't think that people do enough. And I agree 100%. Now the qualifier is, I don't mean you need to get more ice, you need to get more skill developed. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is something else. Okay, so starting this off, I'm just looking at all these players that I train or that I'm in contact with and stuff, and I can look at a body type and I say, you didn't do what you were supposed to do. You just look at a body type, and I know that maybe an NHL team said to them, you better tighten it up. Oh, I know that, right? Or they've given them this direction. And it's like, you're not doing it. Those are the things that I'm talking about. Okay?
And you actually know of players who've been told and still don't do the thing that they've been asked
all the time.
Yeah,
all the time. So it's that. So that leads me back to probably 2014, 2015, or 2016, when Steve Ott, who's a great NHL player, who's an assistant coach with the St. Louis Blues. I used to train him on the ice, and he used to use our gym. And we were just having a nice conversation one day. And sorry to keep this long because you've heard this a million times, but it's a really good conversation because and it was a good conversation for me, because sometimes we get into just the training part and we don't get to know the people on a good level. And so Steve's just a really super nice guy. And even though he goes and licks people's visors on face-offs, but this is the thing, right? This is what made him special. Is he would go to those lengths. So we were having a conversation, and my conversation to him was, Steve, you're not the biggest guy. And we talked about his youth hockey and coming up and stuff like that. And I said, you're not the biggest guy. Like, how did you become the grind guy, like the rat of the league? Because he was very, very hated throughout the league because he was a rat. And
like a Brad Marchand type.
Yeah, very, very much like that. You love to hate him, right?
Yeah.
You love to hate him, and he was on your team. You love to have him. And he said, well, I just grew up and I was a good player and all that stuff. And he goes, but the bottom line is I get to do this because I know that most guys are bluffing. And he goes, like, if someone says to me, I'm going to cross check your teeth out, he goes, I'm fairly certain they won't do anything about it. Right? Talk is cheap. That's not his quote. That's just something I say. Yeah, talk is cheap. He goes, whereas if I say I'm going to two-hand you across the ankles and maybe try to break your ankle, I'm going to do it. And I might not even tell you I'm doing it because talk is cheap. So his quote, he goes, Andy, including people that you're training here, he goes, everybody says that they want it, but do they really? He goes, a lot of guys bluff. So that's the context of his quote. But I use that with my son a lot. Is when it's a very simple quote, right? And he probably said it wrong, but that was his quote. That's how I use it. I use it exactly the way he said it, and I love it. Because you could always look at a player and know how committed the person is by his actions, not by his words, right? So when I look at players, and the players that I work with are typically some 14-year-olds, but usually 16 to pro are the players that I work with, and I see trends that happen, right? So, anyways, that's the motor behind this thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you have anything right now?
Well, I think it's important to know. Maybe I want to try to re-say what you said so people fully grasp what exactly Steve meant when he was talking about that. Like, everyone says that they want to be a player, they want to make the NHL. Every kid says that. Everyone that plays junior hockey, everybody says that. But when it comes down to whether or not someone actually wants to, it's kind of what we said before you started with that story. It's like, are you doing those things, those behaviors, those actions that show you're willing to do the thing to get there? Like, that's why it's so hard, right? Like, it's not, if it was easy, everybody would do it. That's another cliche, right? It would be easy to do. It'd be like going to school. Everyone's just there. But it's really, really hard. So when people say, oh yeah, I want to play in the NHL, it's like, that's fine. But do you do those things? do you stick to your guns? Do you stick to your word? Are you committed? Are you disciplined about things? Are you willing to make sacrifices? Are you willing to be uncompromising about your training, about your nutrition, about your sleep? And that doesn't mean you never have an off day or you never go to bed late or you are a church boy and never do a wrong thing. That's not what that means. But it just means the vast majority of the time you're being driven by your goal and other things don't matter to you. And that's what kind of what that quote, at least to me, that's what that quote means for me. Because when the hard part comes is when, the kids ask you to go to the prom party or the guys are going to the cottage, like you mentioned before, or you have opportunity to not do the thing, or it's just a Saturday and I'm not sitting next to you and you cannot do the run. Like those are the things where those are the difference makers. And that's, I think, what Steve is talking about in addition to, guys doing, sticking to their word. If they say they're going to whack you, they're going to whack you. And those are the kind of things. And if you say like, I want to make the NHL, that's another one of those things. It's like, okay, are you a bluffer or are you actually serious? Because your actions will let us know
Yeah,
whether
your
you're
actions
serious
will
or
tell
not,
you
right?
exactly
Yeah.
where you want to end up.
Yeah.
So, so I see a very high percentage of players that do the minimum. What does that mean? Okay, so what I mean is, do they get to the gym? Yep, they get to the gym. Is that good? 100%, that's good. Um, do they do their skill development? Yep, and is that good? It's fantastic. It's good, but to me, that's the minimum. You need to go to a gym. You need to get on the ice a little bit and do um, some skill development, or like in different parts of the year, it's different levels of skill development or whatever. But like the gym is the easy part, getting to the gym. Coming to see you or going to see your trainer, that's the easy part. You follow their lead. But so as you're doing your workouts, are you paying attention to it? Are you focused while you're doing the workout? Are you just going through the motions? I see like a lot of the times, excuse me, a lot of times, like when I'm in here when the guys are working out, yeah, sometimes I'm just sitting there and pissing around or whatever, but a lot of times I'm just looking just to see those little subtle details, and I see a lot of it. For example, when we do like, at the end of a whatever set and you have a stretch and the stretch is like a half-ass stretch, it's like you missed the point. It's that run that you talked about on Saturday. It's like you're not there now. Why didn't you do the run? Because you're not watching. It's easy just to say no, right? So I look at that, and it's easy to get to the gym. It's easy to go where someone's telling you what to do, and maybe you can hide a little bit, or maybe you're working your ass off, but that's the absolute minimum. Okay, so
Okay. Let me just hop in for a
yep,
sec because I want to just qualify this too, because a lot of people that listen to this have younger kids. And this conversation is mostly in the context of like 16 and older. So, like, don't take what we're saying to your 8-year-old and be like, hey, kid, what are you doing today that's going to make you an NHL? Like, that's not really who it's for. Right. Not that that's necessarily bad if the kid just is crazy about hockey. We're not saying that either. But just this is for like kids that are like 16 and older when it's time to start taking hockey seriously, 15, around that age and older. That's who this is curated towards. So curated again twice. But
yeah, it's good.
yeah, I know. But so keep that in mind when you're listening to what we're talking about here, because we're not saying this for your 10-year-old or for your 8-year-old or for your 12-year-old. And if you take this advice and you apply it to your 10-year-old, now you're being the pain in the ass that we always talk about.
Yeah,
right?
there's a point
To a
where
degree.
there's a point where it matters, but then there's also a point where you'll see the people see what I mean. That part of it would be a good thing if they did adopt the
Right.
principles.
Of course. Within
They have
reason.
the initiative to do
Yeah.
that, not being told to. This is all about the initiative.